Right now in this country, we have a press that is working against counterterrorism measures, and that puts all of us in jeopardy. Just my opinion. I could be wrong, but I'm not wrong about one thing. The people who run the New York Times and other committed left-wing media truly believe that the Bush administration is a danger to civil liberties, and that, in general, the president is harming, not helping this nation. With that mindset, the anti-Bush media is using all its power to damage the administration any way it can. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Bill O'Reilly. A personal story segment tonight. This is truly a story that you have to decide for yourself. I say that some anti-Bush media in America is putting us all in danger by exposing, criticizing, and undermining just about everything the administration does in the war on terror. The anti-Bush media says it's looking out for you, that the administration is trampling your rights and waging the terror war ineptly. Joining us now from Washington, former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense Jeb Babin, author of the book Showdown, and Fox News analyst Jane Hall, a former reporter for the Los Angeles Times. All right, we just heard Mr. Daly, and, you know, former FBI agents tend to be conservative in these matters, but I am a guy, Jane, who really wants an aggressive watchdog press. I mean, I make my living doing that. But I read that article today, and I'm saying to myself, what? And then when I heard Snow get out there and say, look, we asked these guys not to run it, and now, obviously, the whole thing is blown. Well, how do you react to that?
Well, you know, I have to tell you, this is a lot harder to defend than the warrantless wiretapping story that involved millions of Americans' phone records and may not even be legal. The Times was approached by the Bush administration. I think that they would say there is a compelling public interest.
But what is it?
Well, there is a debate to be had in this country about national security versus how far do we want to go on civil liberties.
Jane, let's drop the theory for a minute. And you're an American. You're an American, and you're smart, and you're a journalist, and you're trained. Okay.
Right.
Now you're reading this article, Jan. I want to talk theory. I hate the theory. All right.
Okay.
You're reading the article, and I'm reading the article, and Mr. Babin is reading the article, and I'm going to myself, what is the reason that I, Bill O'Reilly, have got to know that that the United States authorities, with a subpoena, are gathering information about where money wire transfers go? Why do I need to know this if the whole thing's going to be blown? And well, I can't answer that question. Can you?
Well, I think that the reason to consider running this story is that they were not individual subpoenas. It's very broad subpoenas. It's a
it's a subpoena.
But it's not. There hasn't been congressional oversight. It hasn't been formally approved.
The administration says there was, and the administration provided congressional people to tell Keller at the New York Times and the people at the LA Times what was going on, Jane.
Well, but apparently there are people who were involved in this program who have concerns about it. The consortium had concerns about the legal liability possibilities of this. It may be overly broad. It may be something that needs to be considered. What kind of oversight?
A lot of maybes in there to me.
Well,
a lot of maybes.
That's the only reason for running it. This is not an easy story to defend.
Mr. Babin, go ahead. Wail. I know you're going to wail on him. Go ahead.
Well, the New York Times has chosen sides in this war, and they're not on our side, Bill. If this was a story to expose government corruption, if this was a story to expose some horrible action by our troops or something like that, we need a free press. Okay, that sort of stuff maybe needs to come out. There's not a word in there that says this is an illegal program. They have subpoenas for this information. There is no allegation in this story that the government is acting illegally. If there is no allegation like that, I'm telling you, the New York Times is breaking the law here, and we have gone overboard. We have gone way far beyond where we have.
Here's the problem. Wall Street Journal, a conservative editorial page, also ran stuff on its, I guess, in the edition. But here's the problem. Tony Snow gets out there today, and he says, look, we told them we didn't want him to run it. But he didn't attack the New York Times. He didn't say, you guys botched our program, we're angry, we're going to get to the bottom of who leaked it to you. He didn't do any of that, Mr. Babin. He showed zero outrage on this. Tony
Well,
did.
I can't speak for Tony. I don't know what briefs he has.
He wasn't outraged.
I did see him. I know, but apparently he didn't talk to the same people I did, or maybe they've made a policy decision in the White House that they're going to actually surrender the issue of classification of programs to the New York Times.
All right, now let me ask you one more direct question. You made a very provocative statement that you believe the New York Times on the side of the terrorists. You don't really believe that, do you?
I believe that at this point, Pinch Sulzberger and Bill Keller ought to be frog marched out of the New York Times building and either arrested for publishing classified information or compelled to divulge the sources. The New York Times has chosen sides, Bill.
But why would they keep their own families in danger? Why would they do that?
If you look at what Pinch Sulzberger said in that graduation speech he gave...
Well, he's a far-left guy. But why would they put their own families in danger, though, Mr. Babbitt?
Because I think...
Hold it, Jane. I'm going to give you the last word, Jane. Go ahead.
Because I think they believe they know better. These guys, Lichtblau and Reisner, are out there saying, oh, the terrorists already knew that. How do they know that? They don't. The New York Times has chosen itself as the fourth branch of our government. They are out of control, Bill. They are hurting our national security.
All right, Jane, you go ahead. I'm going to give the last word. You got 60 seconds. Say whatever you want.
I think it's outrageous. I mean, journalists are risking their lives to cover the war in Iraq. There needs to be a department of this government there needs to be a watchdog function. There are a lot of things going on. This administration is doing a lot of new things that are a departure that they think are valid. There needs to be some reporting on what is going on, that we need to be having information about new techniques.
But again, you're back in the theoretical, but you wouldn't have run this story if you were the editor of the New York Times, Jan. I know you wouldn't have run it.
I think I would have run it with a heck of a lot less detail.
So you see this article today in the New York Times. Is that undermining the war on terror?
No. No, I don't think it undermines the war on terror. It may undermine the ability of the government to retain secrets, and if that's the case, it's the fault of the leakers. New York Times said it spoke to 20 people who work for the government. Let's assume that number is accurate.
But no. But that's a little misleading. You don't want to misleading this. The White House let them do it. After the White House knew the story was in play, all right?
Right.
The White House said, please don't run the story. The New York Times said, blank you, we're going to run the story.
Well,
then the White House gave the New York Times and the LA Times access to these people.
So that its version could get into the story.
So that it wasn't any shenanigans.
For the sake of argument, let's say the New York Times has one source, and that source is a person covered, works for the government, is covered by
you'd prosecute that source.
That person could be prosecuted, but not the Times.
You're dodging the question. And it's a very, very important question.
Well, the question presumes that journalists can be prosecuted for what they write, and they can't be.
I disagree, though. I believe that under the War Powers Act, the big problem is there's no declared war. That the New York Times right now, this is blown. This whole program is blown. I know whether the terrorists knew about it or not, doesn't matter. The whole program of looking at this big financial nexus and tracing wire transfers to alleged bad guys is over. Because the press blew it for no reason.
A couple of points. The government suffers very little when the terrorists know this. There's no other way to wire other than through this. It covers 98% of the banks in the world.
Okay, but do you think those schmeals in Miami who just got popped know that?
Well, I don't think they were wiring.
It's low-level guys that they're probably going to get.
Well, every transaction in the country of more than $10,000, the government is automatically informed of it.
This was abroad now. Come on, you know that. This is in Belgium.
Right.
There's no IRS reporting over there.
The government was serving what's called national security letters under the Right to Privacy Act of 1978. These are self-written search warrants.
So you don't have any problem with this?
I don't have any problem with the New York Times publishing it. I wish they didn't. But I applaud their right to do so.
All right, why do you wish
to win the war on terror like everybody else?
So you're admitting that they're hurting us in the war on terror.
On balance, it is better for them to have the right to publish than for the government to deter them.
But you're back in the world of theory again.
No. This is a very practical decision, Bill. The practical decision is do we exercise our First Amendment right, or do we obey with what the government wants? Are we just a mouthpiece for the government?
I'm not saying we should go in and close them down. What I'm saying is, in the court of public opinion, they're making my life more dangerous, my family's life more dangerous, and the court of public opinion ought to hold them accountable.
You can make that argument. You can also make the argument that you are freer because you know what your government is doing. Because the New York Times and Bill O'Reilly are not lapdogs to the government.
But they can't do anything then. There's no secrets then.
only the deliverer of the secrets under the present law
you're
can
back
be
in this
prosecuted.
theory
This is the real world. Whoever told the New York Times about the NSA spying can go to jail.
I told the guys in Guantanamo who like me, don't they like
me there?
Yes. I told them not to let you come back. And they let me down.
They all love you, Bill.